When people talk about Eastern European science fiction, Solaris and Stalker usually dominate the conversation, but they are far from the whole story. Today, I've brought you several other fascinating science fiction films from 20th century Eastern Europe that deserve far more attention than they usually receive. Let's begin with the Polish film The War of the Worlds, Next Century. Despite borrowing Herbert Wells's title and opening with a dedication to Wells and Orson Welles, famous for his 1938 radio adaptation, this is not really an adaptation of the novel. The story begins 3 days before the end of the century, less than 2 weeks after Martians have landed on Earth. Iron Idam hosts an independent news program. He is ordered to tell viewers that the visitors are friendly, that everyone should cooperate with their friendship society, and that citizens should provide information about their blood types. When he objects, his manager says he is free to broadcast whatever he wants. Soon afterward, security forces destroy his apartment and take away his wife. At the center of the film is the question of a free press and the state's control over it. As the story develops, it becomes a bitter satire of television as authoritarian propaganda, with increasingly stupid entertainment used to distract and pacify a willing audience. The film was shown at the Gdansk Film Festival in 1981, but was later shelved after martial law was imposed in Poland. Because of its clear parallels with the country's political situation, it did not receive a theatrical release there until 1983. Next up is the sci-fi comedy You Are a Widow, Sir, one of the wildest entries on this list. During a ceremony between two kings, the commander of the honor guard accidentally slices off the visiting monarch's arm. The embarrassed king is so fed up that he decides to disband the entire military. The generals respond by plotting to assassinate him, but the royal astrologer, Stuart Hampel, discovers the plan and warns him. The conspirators have Hampel killed, and his brain is sent to a neurology institute for preservation. Meanwhile, the generals commission an artificial duplicate of a famous actress made from veal and plan to bring it to life using the brain of a sadistic murderess. Naturally, the brains are switched by accident, and Hampel's mind ends up inside the actress's artificial body. And all of this is still only the setup. The lead actress plays both the actress and her artificial double, shifting between several completely different personalities, and she is incredible. Slapstick, bombs hidden in shoes, random murders, and schemes within schemes. The film never stops escalating, and it is an absolute delight. Another comedy, Tomorrow I'll Wake Up and Scald Myself with Tea, follows a group of former Nazis who have survived into the future thanks to anti-aging pills. They plan to travel back to 1944 and give Hitler a hydrogen bomb that could change the course of the war. The mission is supposed to be carried out by Carol, a corrupt time travel pilot who has agreed to help them. On the morning of the mission, however, Carol unexpectedly dies after choking on a bread roll. His well-meaning twin brother, Jan, cannot bring himself to tell Carol's fiancée, Ava, what happened and begins impersonating him, completely unaware that he is stepping into a Nazi time travel plot. When everything goes wrong, John must make several more trips through time, both to save his brother and stop the group's dangerous scheme. This is far from a serious science fiction story. The effects are dated, but the film fully embraces its absurd premise and delivers a genuinely original and entertaining take on time travel. Amphibian Man was the biggest Soviet box office hit of 1962, attracting 65.5 million viewers during its initial run. It never received a theatrical release in the United States, although a dubbed version later appeared on American television. The film is based on a 1928 novel by Alexander Belyaev, a prolific science fiction writer often nicknamed the Russian Jules Verne. Businessman Pedro Zurita runs a pearl diving operation in a small seaside town. The local divers live in fear of a mysterious creature they call the Sea Devil. Pedro is determined to marry Gutierre, the beautiful daughter of an elderly pearl diver, but she refuses him and dives into the sea, where she is threatened by a shark. The Sea Devil saves her, while Pedro allows her to believe that he was responsible. The creature turns out to be Ichthyander, the adopted son of a scientist who saved his life as a child by by implanting him with shark gills. Naive about human society, Ichthyandr ventures into town, falls in love with Gutierra, and begins courting her, but Pedro has no intention of giving her up. The film is beautifully made, and many of its underwater sequences still look surprisingly good today. Everything is wrapped in a warm, almost fairy tale atmosphere. It is a great film for a summer evening. Now for Ikarie XB1, released in the United States under the title Voyage to the End of the Universe. That version, however, was shortened by nearly 10 minutes and given a completely different ending. So when looking for the film today, the original Czechoslovak version is definitely the one to watch. It is often cited as an important precursor to 2001. Kubrick's film is obviously its own original masterpiece, but there are clear similarities, especially in the production design and the patient scenes establishing everyday life aboard the spacecraft. Set in 2163, the story follows a crew traveling to investigate a mysterious planet orbiting Alpha Centauri. For those aboard the ship, the journey lasts only 28 months, but 15 years pass back on Earth. Unlike many earlier space movies, it creates a believable and deeply human environment for the story to unfold in. It also has an excellent score, combining unusual electronic music with choral passages. Sexmission was one of the biggest commercial successes in Polish cinema. More than 11 million people saw it in Poland, and it later attracted tens of millions more across the Soviet Union. Two men volunteer for a groundbreaking experiment that is supposed to place them in suspended animation for 3 years. When they finally wake up, however, 53 years have passed. They are told that a nuclear war made the surface uninhabitable and wiped out the rest of the male population, leaving them inside a tightly controlled underground society populated entirely by women. One of them, an unapologetic ladies' man, initially assumes that he has landed in paradise. That changes quickly once the authorities begin deciding what should be done with the last two surviving men. The pair start searching for a way out and gradually realize that the society's official version of history may not be entirely true. Sexual humor and irony turn out to be the perfect recipe here. The film skewers the battle of the sexes while sneaking in real criticism of totalitarianism and enforced prudishness, mocking both exaggerated feminism and egocentric machismo. It is an excellent movie. You might know Possession, but chances are you've never heard of On the Silver Globe, another film by Polish director Andrzej Zulawski. It's a movie you need to approach consciously. Production began in the 1970s, but the Polish government shut it down before completion. Years later, Zulawski reconstructed what remained, filling the missing parts with his own narration. The story follows a group of astronauts who flee Earth and crash land on another planet very similar to our own. Over the following generations, their descendants create an entirely new civilization. Jersey, the last surviving member of the original expedition, lives long enough to witness its beginnings and gradually becomes a near-divine figure to the people around him. By the time another astronaut arrives from Earth, this society has fallen under the control of the Sterns, the planet's native species. Its religion promises the arrival of a savior who will free humanity, so the new visitor is immediately proclaimed their messiah. It's not an easy film, strange, fragmented, and visually overwhelming, but if you tune into its rhythm, On the Silver Globe is worth every minute.